Hello there, and welcome to part 2 of my Star Wars The Clone Wars Retrospective series. I covered most of the groundwork for the show back in part 1, so if you haven't seen that video yet, you can check it out right here. So, right off the bat, the second season of The Clone Wars is a top-to-bottom improvement over the first.
Here's where the fun begins.
In the technical department, facial expressions have become much less rigid and more natural-looking, with characters now capable of showing a wider range of expressions. The show has also begun to introduce many new types of environments, extreme heat and cold, sandstorms, etc. These environments have become much more detailed and atmospheric, using visual effects and cinematography more effectively to enhance the mood of the scene. The choreography of lightsaber battles has also dramatically improved. Every move made by combatants now seems much more purposeful within the context of the fight, and we've mostly eschewed the pointless spins and twirls that we saw in most of the lightsaber combat during Season 1. Where the first season was mostly a proof of concept for translating Star Wars into a serialized weekly television format, this second season is a lot more focused on pushing the envelope in terms of different types of stories that can be explored within the context of the world that's been established here. Many of Season 2's episodes are centered around events that don't necessarily tie into the actual Clone Wars as much as they did in the first season, and the show is leaning a lot more heavily into different types of genre fiction that you might not expect to see from Star Wars.
We're dealing with different types of episodes that range from massive action to almost horror-type episodes. We're dealing with better effects. We're dealing with more in-depth story arcs overall.
I also get the sense that this season is setting up the various moving pieces, its characters and story beats, to play off more substantially down the road. Like the last time around, most episodes of The Clone Wars Season 2 star either Anakin, Obi-Wan, or Ahsoka. However, unlike last time, the main focus is solidly on those three. There aren't as many guest stars this time around, the most prominent one being Mace Windu, who appears in several episodes. There's no Jar Jar Binks episodes, even Padme only really appears one time in an episode which also co-stars Anakin. On the one hand, there aren't as many neat one-off characters this time as there were last time, but on the other hand, this more narrowly focused cast translates into more character development over a longer period of time. Once again, I find that the most consistently engaging character is Anakin Skywalker. The Clone Wars actually seems to be making a compelling case for why the Jedi are discouraged from acting on emotion and avoiding personal attachments. See, because Anakin's status as a Jedi Knight makes him simultaneously one of the highest-ranking officers in the Republic, as well as basically a superhero who's worth hundreds, if not thousands, of regular troops in combat.
Come on, there's 3 of us and only 1 of him. It won't matter.
Because he has so much power, he's frequently tempted to use it recklessly, with his personal feelings regularly getting in the way of or potentially jeopardizing the important job he's supposed to be doing, even when it's something that's mostly innocuous, like screwing around with Padme's ex-boyfriend. What was that line from Game of Thrones again?
Love is the death of duty.
Yeah, that's the one. If only that were the extent of it, though. Anakin is beginning to show signs here of his potential to turn down a darker path.
I mean, he's angry, he's intense. He's willing to kill everybody in that room to save his Padawan.
You have nowhere left to run, bounty hunter.
In a way, it's like we're seeing this darker side of Anakin, and in a very real illustration of why Jedi should not have attachments, we see that attachment issue get exploited before our very eyes.
Although I do think the show beats you over the head a little bit too much with it. Whenever Anakin goes too far, which happens multiple times, a few notes are played from the Imperial March theme.
Who will strike first and brand themselves a cold-blooded killer?
Anakin. What? He was gonna blow up the ship.
Anyway, the point is that most of the time, whenever something like this happens, it's specifically because Anakin is putting his personal feelings ahead of his better judgment. This is also what they were going for with him in the movies, except it didn't work as well there because Anakin was already kind of an entitled, whiny dickbag to begin with.
Excuse me.
So it's not nearly as much of a shock to the system when he starts to do things that are reprehensible, unlike in this TV show where he's an otherwise well-intentioned, likable, caring individual. The other two mains also get some good character work in Season 2. Ahsoka Tano is now beginning to come into her own. At the beginning of the season, under Anakin's tutelage, Ahsoka is becoming brash and overconfident, leading to the two frequently butting heads.
Don't worry, Master. As you well know, I can follow orders.
You have adopted many of your master's ways, including a lack of subtlety.
Sometimes I don't think you realize how alike you two have become.
Can't do anything right these days.
Their master-student relationship is also revealed to be kind of irregular among Jedi and their Padawans, and this is exemplified by contrasting them with two other Jedi, Master Luminara and her Padawan, Barriss Offee. Offee?
Barriss Offee, at your service.
These two have a much less personal working relationship than Anakin and Ahsoka, and while they're definitely portrayed as somewhat detached emotionally, this is not framed as a fault, but rather as a sort of Jedi professionalism that our two leads are lacking in.
Now hold on, who decided that?
There are multiple occasions where Ahsoka and Barriss are paired up on missions together, and initially Ahsoka is a bit confrontational, but the two quickly develop a rapport and begin to influence each other in positive ways. There's a few episodes that center around Ahsoka having to learn self-reliance, patience, objectivity, and humility, many of which are attributes that her master Anakin does not possess. Ahsoka is also mentored by an elderly Jedi Master who further teaches her patience and cool-headedness.
For the first time, you really start to see who Ahsoka is as a person, and she's very apologetic and somber. You see that uncomfortableness in her, the emotion. It connects her a little bit more to the audience.
By the end of the season, in a lot of ways, I feel like Ahsoka is on her way to becoming a better Jedi than Anakin. If not in combat prowess, then certainly in the ability to stay cool under pressure and stay true to her morals. She seems visibly disturbed by the use of torture in order to extract information from one of the villains.
I think you really get that they are by now a team, that they care about each other. There's a level of respect that we weren't seeing before.
I can't let Bane get away.
Patience! Master!
You see that kind of maturity that Ahsoka Tano has not had in the past.
Then there's Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's nice to give Obi-Wan something to do. He's kind of a static character after all, more or less locked by the movie series into not changing all that much during the Clone Wars.
Hello there.
I kind of like the direction that they're taking him on the show. Season 2 of the Clone Wars introduces a love interest for Obi-Wan named Satine Kryze, the Duchess of Planet Mandalore.
I'll take care of this, Obi-Wan. You, go find your girlfriend.
Right, but no, Anakin, she's not my...
Now, you might think that this cheapens Obi-Wan's character, making him more like Anakin, but I disagree. It's precisely because Obi-Wan is more responsible than Anakin that he ultimately does not pursue a relationship with Satine. He wanted to once when he was younger, but he's a big boy now and has too many responsibilities in the Jedi Order.
I live by the Jedi Code.
As Master Yoda says, a Jedi must not form attachments.
Yes, but he usually leaves out the undercurrent of remorse.
Basically, the moral of the story here is that unless you're like completely asexual or the Force literally gets you off, being a Jedi kinda sucks. You're highly likely as a Jedi to end up either alone and miserable or extremely angry and jaded. So this character stuff for Obi-Wan is all great on paper. There's just one little tiny problem with this romance subplot for me. I don't really buy the romance.
You have the romantic soul of a slug.
The story leans pretty heavily on an off-screen history between these two characters, which tells us they're in love, but doesn't give them really any chemistry or demonstrate what exactly it is that each of them sees in the other.
Well, you certainly haven't changed much.
There's a pretty big ideological gap between the two, where Satine is a staunch pacifist, Obi-Wan is a high-ranking soldier in a war to suppress a separatist movement. And this contrast makes for some really good debates between the two, but it also makes me believe their romance even less.
Duchess, Master Jedi. It's been a long trip.
I can't really picture Obi-Wan and Satine doing all that much with each other apart from constantly argue, because that's all they really do on the show.
We'll have to stand and fight. Or in your case, just stand.
Personally, I think that Obi-Wan and Satine had a lot more chemistry in live action. That movie came out almost 20 years ago. She was played by Nicole Kidman.
I was to audition for Satine. Mademoiselle Satine. Hello there.
As for this season's villains, again, we see a big improvement. While in Season 1, Chancellor Palpatine was virtually a non-entity, appearing in only a couple of scenes here and there and never really getting directly involved in the plot.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
This time, he takes a much more prominent role as the series' main villain, and I'm not even talking about his Darth Sidious persona, I mean right out in the open as good old Sheev Palpatine.
It is my moral imperative to take action.
There are several episodes where he takes political positions in his role as Chancellor that directly benefit him, but he always frames these positions as either humanitarian in nature or necessary for the greater good.
Would it not be more efficient to simply kill the beast? Every passing minute of warfare brings countless deaths. Deaths that could be prevented once the beast's secrets are unlocked. If there is any way to hasten that process, it is our moral duty to explore it.
If I had just one small criticism of this writing, it's that Palpatine is clearly evil, and anyone who can't see it is blind. I would argue that's even more the case here than it was in the prequel films.
Who is behind all of this? Who tampered with that recording? Who tried to convict me of murder and throw me in jail?
I'm not sure.
As a very wise old murderer once said,
Palpatine's behind it all.
Palpatine is so transparently a bad guy out in the open that when he's acting clandestinely as Darth Sidious, you've got to have him commit the most over-the-top, cartoonishly evil act you can think of. Kidnapping and experimenting on babies.
Among the children of the Jedi, there are no innocents.
Which he does through a proxy, a new character named Cad Bane. Bane is a bounty hunter with no moral qualms who will pull out any stop to get what he wants.
Sure. As long as I get paid.
Put quite simply, he's really damn cool. He may be a bounty hunter, but he's definitely not what we're used to seeing in Star Wars bounty hunters. It's almost like he stepped right out of a pulpy detective movie. I love the wide brim hat and trench coat, and his voice is also super unique and cool sounding.
You're quite clever, but naive.
In addition to his design, I also really like Cad Bane as a character. It's neat to have a Star Wars villain who doesn't need a ginormous army or a criminal syndicate or evil superpowers in order to get by. Bane gets the job done through his own cunning, intelligence, and ruthlessness. One of my favorite types of villain.
If I activate this control, the outside airlock will open and she will be sucked into oblivion. Do you think you can kill me and then save her before she's pulled out into space? It's a horrible way to die.
He doesn't get a ton of development in this season, but I'm hoping that changes down the line, because I am really enjoying this guy so far. Speaking of Star Wars bounty hunters, this season of The Clone Wars sees the reintroduction of Boba Fett, the first time chronologically that he's appeared since Attack of the Clones. He's only in 3 episodes of The Clone Wars Season 2, but the show's writers make the most of those episodes, giving him more characterization than he gets from all 3 films that he appears in combined. Basically what we've got here is your boilerplate revenge is bad character arc.
I'm not quitting now. Not when I'm so close.
Boba wants revenge on Mace Windu for killing his father Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones, and he tries several times to assassinate Windu during the show. However, we do see the beginnings of a potential redemption for Boba, who is quickly becoming disillusioned by the life of a killer.
The question is, what does Boba really want? How does he want to resolve this revenge issue? How far is he willing to go to get it?
That was never part of the plan. I just wanted to kill the Jedi that murdered my father.
It all becomes too much for him. It has to test his idea of morality.
Ultimately, of course, we know that it ain't gonna stick, but this is still an intriguing direction to take the character, and I'm looking forward to seeing where he goes from here.
You murdered my father. I'll never forgive you.
Well, you're going to have to.
I mentioned up top that The Clone Wars Season 2 is starting to play around with some different types of genre fiction. My favorite episodes of this season are the 2 Zillo Beast episodes. These take obvious inspiration from the Japanese kaiju subgenre, specifically the Godzilla series. I mean, it's right there in the name.
Oh, don't like the sound of that.
But I would also compare this story structure directly to something that you might see on Star Trek. What we've got here is your classic political conundrum. Republic troops under the command of Mace Windu are trying to secure the allegiance of this planet that has a surplus of fuel the Republic desperately needs in order to continue the war effort. However, they discover the existence of this massive creature, the Zillo Beast, thought long extinct, which is considered an ancient enemy of the planet's local residents. The locals demand the Republic's help in killing the beast, and refuse to formalize their alliance until it's done. Mace Windu is obviously opposed to this on humanitarian grounds, but Palpatine wants it done in the name of the greater good.
Are you certain this argument is worth it? I mean, after all, it's just one creature. Remember what the Chancellor said.
It isn't the creature, it's the principle.
In classic Trek fashion, the good guys eventually concoct a technobabbly plan to capture the beast rather than killing it.
Usually on the show, someone would come up with a complicated plan, then explain it with a simple analogy.
If we can reroute engine power through the primary weapons and reconfigure them to Melvar's frequency, that should overload his electroquantum structure.
Like putting too much air in a balloon!
Maybe a stun cannon or a pulse could penetrate through the skin and short-circuit its nervous system. Like putting it into a deep sleep.
In effect, I put them all to sleep.
From there, the focus shifts onto the ethics of experimentation on other life forms. These are a great couple of episodes where characters are forced to examine the morality, or lack thereof, of what is or is not permissible during wartime. That's only one example, though. The Clone Wars second season also plays around with many other genre-specific tropes. There's a series of episodes involving an army of hive-minded zombie insects and mind-controlling worm creatures that feel like they've taken inspiration from a wide variety of classic sci-fi and horror properties like Invasion of the Body Snatchers or the Alien franchise.
Kill me. Please. Please. Kill me.
We've also got several episodes done in the style of noir, detective, or crime cinema.
Actually, Cad Bane was smoking in our early cut. I think it got exchanged for a toothpick. That was definitely, a scene out of a film noir.
And there's even an episode dedicated to prolific Japanese filmmaker Akira Kurosawa, which is an obvious homage to Kurosawa's most famous film, Seven Samurai.
If we don't give the pirates a portion of our crop, they will destroy our homes.
Don't worry though, the Clone Wars has definitely not abandoned its exploration of war as a central theme. There's a couple of episodes detailing a second battle of Geonosis following the one seen at the end of Attack of the Clones. These are a terrific extension of some of the more large-scale war campaigns that made up Season 1, showing the battle progress in multiple phases and from different perspectives. Another great episode, and probably my runner-up for favorite of the season, is Deserter. In this story, which is the only one to prominently feature clones as the main characters, Captain Rex is injured and his platoon leaves him with some local farmers to heal up, but it's revealed that one of the farmers is a clone trooper named Cut who's deserted the army. At first, Rex harshly condemns Cut as a coward and a traitor, vowing to turn him into Republic forces. However, over the course of the episode, he's influenced a lot by the deserter, who details how he's become disillusioned with his role as a soldier fighting in a war he doesn't believe in.
I was just another expendable clone, waiting for my turn to be slaughtered in a war that made no sense to me.
It's a great extension of some of the stuff we saw with the clones in Season 1, and I do hope this is expanded upon in the coming seasons. Then finally, there's the Mandalorian situation. No, not that one. Now, I try to leave real-world politics off the table as much as possible on this channel. Nobody wants to be divisive. We're all here to be entertained. But, I mean, hey, if the show goes there first, I'm gonna have to talk about it, so stop me if you've heard this one.
Clearly, your investigation was ordered because the Senate is eager to intervene in our affairs.
There's a three-parter where both sides of the Clone Wars fight in a secondary proxy war through different ideological factions on Mandalore: the peaceful modern government headed by Duchess Satine, and Death Watch, a group of extremists who wish to return Mandalore to its more militaristic roots.
They are trying to bring back the ancient Mandalorian ways of being the super commando and regain dominion for their mythology.
For generations, my ancestors fought proudly as warriors against the Jedi. Now, that woman tarnishes the very name Mandalorian.
Despite retaining formal diplomatic relations with the Republic, the Mandalorian government wishes to remain neutral in the Clone Wars. However, when Death Watch, backed by separatist leaders, begins to ramp up terrorist attacks on the populace, Palpatine attempts to send Republic troops to occupy Mandalore in the name of fighting the terrorists and restoring peace to the planet. Satine argues that this would instead have the effect of inflaming Mandalorian support for Death Watch, since, who wants to be occupied by a foreign government? Nobody. And that all of this would eventually drag Mandalore into a civil war.
Mandalore is making great strides to find the leaders of this terrorist movement. They are not powerful enough to destabilize our government.
Let us commit our military might to defending the Mandalorian people.
Defending? You mean to occupy our home?
We mean to save your people.
If the Republic gets involved in our affairs, it will only lead to further violence.
5 minutes later.
The occupation of Mandalore will usher in a new level of security for the Republic and its fight against corruption.
Yes, that's right. The whole situation on Mandalore is a crystal clear allegory for the same type of unwarranted military interventionism and bad foreign policy by our real-world superpowers that's been plaguing other parts of the world for decades, with Death Watch essentially playing the part of space ISIS. And I couldn't quite believe at first when I realized the show was going there. After all, this is ostensibly supposed to be a show for kids.
The people have been worked into such a frenzy that when the Republic does arrive, the Death Watch will be considered heroes.
On a less heavy note, I was having a really hard time with these episodes reconciling what were shown about Mandalorian society with what we were given last year in the first season of the new live-action show, The Mandalorian. The latter had me to understand that being Mandalorian was a signifier not of race, but religion. I mean, this is literally stated at one point.
I was not born on Mandalore.
But you're a Mandalorian.
Mandalorian isn't a race.
It's a creed.
They are a warrior race. I gave them kind of a very Nordic kind of flavor.
There's also no mention whatsoever on this show of Mandalorians having to keep their helmets on at all times. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter to me since the shows are set in different times and are doing different things with their worlds and characters, but these discrepancies are especially confusing considering both shows featured heavy involvement from Dave Filoni, who states his reverence for established lore multiple times in interviews and bonus features that I've seen.
George Lucas tells me one day, we're gonna put the Mandalorians in the Clone Wars. And I go, oh boy, because let me show you this. And I move this big pile of material over and I said, this is everything that the Mandalorians are right now. As the expanded universe began to take shape, there began to be many stories about Mandalorians. All these materials come out, all this stuff happens, all this stuff gets defined. Play Knights of the Old Republic, you see Mandalorians thousands of years in the past. All of this because of one helmeted bounty hunter.
I wouldn't be surprised if there is a reasonable explanation. If you know what it is, let me know down in the comments. On the whole though, Season 2 of Star Wars The Clone Wars really was a treat for me to watch. I had been told the show was good, but this season has frankly surpassed my expectations.
So all in all, a landmark for us in the Clone Wars, but it's just really now a shadow of the things that were to come.
I'm highly looking forward to Season 3. So until then, if you like this video, you'd be doing me a huge favor if you could hit the like button, subscribe, and share this video with anyone else who you think might enjoy it, and ring the bell to stay up to date on all of my future stuff. Leave a comment down below with any of your thoughts on the Clone Wars second season, and check out some of the other great stuff I've got up here on my channel. As always, thanks so much to all of you guys for watching, and take care.